Welcome to the Habit Chess Podcast. My name is Ms. Bahag, and on this show, I like to talk about training the strength and conditioning of skills. I've been coaching for over 10 years, athletes, executives, high performers from all walks of life, and so I really enjoy taking fitness, coaching, movement, and using them as mental models to be able to learn new things, do it faster, and explore new territory. And so in today's episode, I wanted to cover something that I've been thinking about a lot recently and that is definitely making its rounds on the internet, but it's this idea of vibe coding. And vibe coding has gotten so popular that now you've seen mainstream news networks begin to cover it, saying that, hey, tech companies and places are actually looking for vibe coders. And then not just that, but I saw a post from Ayman Al-Abdullah, who is the former AppSumo CEO from 3 million to about 80 million. And he was mentioning how turning vibe coding into a service is something he has many, founder friends and things like that. So people who are actively looking for vibe coders, where you can literally just be like, hey, this is what I want to build, and the person will do it for you. And he outlined the amount of people that you would need to be able to run that shop. And it wasn't that crazy. It was like one product manager, one, this, one that, and it was definitely under like 5 people. And so I think it's crazy that this trend, what started out as a trend, has now become a very viable and sought after position and will continue to do so, right? Because what you're essentially getting is somebody who is a developer on steroids. So instead of going and paying developers tens and thousands of dollars, you can pay a vibe coder, or even better, you can learn to do it yourself. And so this is something that in December, 6 months ago, I thought of this idea that I had always wanted to, make an app around this concept, but it's not something that was a main project. It's not something that I would have paid thousands and thousands of dollars to a developer for. But once I heard the founder of Replit, he was on My First Million podcast. And, I remember how mind-blowing both Sean Bory and Sam Parr were kind of expressing how this thing was. And I remember trying it later that evening. I kind of signed up for it. I didn't dive into it too hard, but what I remember is a couple weeks later, it was a Saturday night, and before I was about to shut down my laptop, I was like, you know what, let me just sign in to Replit and just play with it, just begin to use it so that I can give myself credit for having done so, because I had been meaning to do this for weeks at this point. And that session, for whatever reason, ended up pulling me into the state of flow where I was on it for probably 3 hours. My wife was with me as well. She was just as excited as I was. She was like, I can't believe it's doing what it's doing. And it really stretched my mind to what was possible, because I'm somebody with very, very minimal, almost no coding experience, right? Took classes in high school, took them maybe in college here and there. I can interpret some code if I really needed to, and, working with websites and stuff. But I wouldn't say that I am somebody who has anywhere near a level of proficiency in any type of coding language. So Replit, if you haven't heard of it before, is basically an AI agent for coding. At least that's how I looked at it. One of the earlier use cases of an agent, when everybody was beginning to talk about things going agentic, this was an app that was actually doing it. And you can experience what it will feel like for other things to be agentic by using this. I know that, ChatGPT has the operator concept where you can, make reservations and do that kind of stuff. To me, that is not as cool as something like Replit and what it's able to do, because truly what you'll do is enter a prompt like, hey, build me this specific thing. And then what it will do is on the other half of the screen, you can see it actually building, actually coding, and doing it at light speed, by the way. And then, of course, being able to really finesse those prompts and turn it into something. Now, the reason I want to share this is because the app that I'm telling you about that I had wanted to make for years was a stopwatch where you could rename your laps, because I don't know why every stopwatch doesn't have that feature. I wish it did, right? And I remember just when every time the Apple Watch update would come out, I would even tap on the laps here and there just to see, oh, did they add it this time? I was like, okay, clearly nobody is going to put in the work to make this. If I want to do it, I mean, okay, this is not a crazy project. I think I can do it. And so I began to just fiddle with it. And from all sorts of things, like certain features I wanted to add, the certain bugs that were revealing itself when I would add something, then this thing would get messed up. Okay, how do you tell it to make just this change? And real quick, what inspired this was the years of coaching that I did and writing programs, since writing programs was a core deliverable. And as you have 50 clients, 60 clients, 70 clients, like that stuff adds up, right? And so being able to track how long each program takes was something that I made a habit. And I did that for years. Even as my roster grew, I still have those notes in my notes app of how many minutes it took for each program every single week. So I wanted an app like this that could actually do it in real time, where instead of me using my Notion time tracking template or something like that, I could just hit lap and I could fill in the blanks here and there, like, okay, did this, right? Prepared for that. And so I can look back instead of going, what did I do on lap 1 again? Like, did I do push-ups there? Or, did I, like, it's just kind of hazy. And so being able to have a very accurate detail and name it as you go was something that was a personal problem for me that I used Replit to solve. And I encourage you, if you're in that position where you want to start experimenting with using some of these AI tools to learn how to code or to begin to build your own thing, I always recommend starting there, because I had my cousin who actually did a version of this where, he made some kind of like homework helper. And I remember asking him, I was like, oh, is this for you or, for someone else? And he was talking about how he doesn't use it. It's for just like he made it for somebody else with no real ideal customer in mind. And so I keep thinking to myself about this next era of products and services and software is all going to be about, like, does it personally affect you in any way? Because if it doesn't, there is someone else out there who it is personally affecting, and they're willing to kind of stand behind that story. And the people who are just opportunists, where you want to build this thing for the sake of building that thing, unless that lane is very familiar to you, that is much harder to go down, versus if you kind of look at yourself and go, okay, what could I build for myself where I don't need to pay an extra $10 a month, $20 a month to have access to this software, but I can build it for myself. It cost me $29 a month to have access to Replit. And I believe the extra credits that I used ended up costing, $45 extra. So the $29 per month plus $45 extra in terms of all the prompting and stuff that I used. So for $65, I basically built this app that would have taken me probably a couple thousand, right, to build a variation of this that wasn't even as good as maybe what I did. Now, of course, it's not crazy advanced. There's all sorts of new features and things like that that I do want to still add to it, but it's kind of like you get to marvel at your own work. Like, I can't believe I made that. I did that. And I think that can be really empowering in an age where you feel really like, like AI is the enemy, where it can kind of open up your mind to like, oh, what else could I build for myself, for those that I love, that just wouldn't be an option before? It would need to appeal to investors or venture capitalists instead of just directly your ideal customer, the person that you are thinking of. Now, I wish I could tell you a cooler story that like, oh, it's making $30K a month and I have some paid version of it now. I don't, but I think what was cool was that in those 2 weeks after I had built the first version, me and my wife used it every day pretty much. Then during that time period, I basically made a note of bugs that were showing up. So certain things that I didn't catch the first time around, where it was like, okay, just formatting or design things. Or an example was when it goes beyond an hour on mobile, instead of like the full time staying within the box, like it was starting to bleed outside of the box. Super random error. You wouldn't have expected that as you're building it. It's not something you notice when you're using it on desktop or iPad, but hey, on mobile, it's apparent. So I just kept a running list of these things going. And then finally, about 2.5 weeks later, I logged back on, and this time I spent an 8-hour session. So I blocked out kind of a whole day to be able to invest into this. And, I fixed all the bugs. There were so many other problems that kind of revealed themselves as I was adding new things. So that was an interesting experience, which is the more complex you make the app, the more features you're adding, there's a chance that there are more room for error, more variables that you need to kind of be aware of. That, oh, right, I did make this back-end sign-in feature, and how is that affecting, the front-end experience for people? And when I got stuck, so when certain prompts I was giving Replit, it's not doing exactly what I needed to do, I went to ChatGPT. I was like, hey, I'm using Replit. This is what I'm telling it. What do I need to tell it to understand what I'm saying and not make stupid changes to anything else? And by the end of those 8 hours, again, I was happy with the variation that I had, to the degree where for the next 2 to 3 months, my wife and I continued to use it pretty much every day. And I share all this to say that if you're in this position where you have a desire to build, but there's always been a barrier, right? This, I need to learn how to code before I can do this, before I can do that. But you do have an idea or concepts of an idea. It can be so gratifying to open up something like Replit. And I know there's many others out there. Replit isn't the only tool, but it's one that I like. And I think I'm nostalgic for it because it had such a mind-blowing moment for me. And I discovered it kind of early. And so I kind of feel, a little like tied to supporting it, I guess. But I think the most astonishing thing is the cost of development. So it's not costing me to have people like, I think there's 100 some people that use it every month. So it's like, okay, it's not costing me for those people to be using it. Of course, there are certain features and things that if I did add that, okay, the usage might go up more and I might be getting billed for even the free people that are using it. But still, we're talking like $29 a month, under even $100 a month to have access to a tool like this to build essentially whatever you want. And what's interesting is we're limited by our creativity now, because I think the second you say, oh yeah, you can build anything with this, your brain kind of breaks for a second. Like, what do you mean you can build anything? And it's like you realize for a moment that, oh, I've never entertained what would I build if I could, because I just never envisioned that I might have access to these skills within myself. And so it's very interesting that these tools like Replit are giving us access to these skills that, you need a very base level of proficiency in to get started. And it's really evening out the playing field in a lot of ways, right? Now, don't get me wrong. What does this do on the other end? This makes it so that the cost to create, the cost to build goes down so much that there will be tons and tons of variations of apps and softwares for every big category that you can think of. And I know the argument is, well, a new version of ChatGPT will come out and kill somebody's startup. And to that, I say, okay, well, as long as you didn't invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in labor and software to be able to make this thing. And unless you made some kind of a decision like that, like, oh, I'm going to buy a building on, in the middle of Market Street in San Francisco. Okay, now you have some things that you are tied to that you are risking probably as a startup. But I think what's cooler is the fact that, to be able to build a version of this app, if somebody, takes it or it gets crushed or whatever, okay, just do another one, make 10 more. It's not that crazy to be able to build something with this. It doesn't take years to be able to do. You can do it in a matter of hours. And for more complex projects, probably a matter of weeks or months. One of the coolest things about this is that you can create something for yourself to begin, right? Use it as a project. That's kind of what I did with Laplist. I wasn't intending on, making it a big public thing. It really was just, okay, I want to use it for myself. And instead of me learning boring ways of coding and just conceptual things, I want to apply it towards a real project where I can, at the end, I have this tangible result. So you can have your versions of whatever that is, but I think it's even worth beginning to explore, what would I build if I could? Because you will find, if not now, very soon, you will be able to do it even easier and easier than it is now. So it could be a small tool that, solves a small problem for you and your family, or it could be something that, hey, it's a little bigger. It has a little bit more market appeal and you can stand behind it. But I think there's this room for play that Replit creates, where if you're not entering it with this crazy, pressure of like, oh, I'm trying to, start a new app and get acquired, and, you've got all this stress going into it with, you can kind of really explore your creativity with it. Like, people have said that AI is going to allow you to externalize your brain, whatever you have inside, instead of this thing being limited by, oh, well, I don't know how to paint, I don't know how to code, I don't know how to set up a camera, I don't know how to do these things. It's like, hey, all of these things are becoming more and more accessible to be able to do. So a couple things. One, think about that. Think about what are the things you want to build? What are the problems that you want to be able to solve, even if they are personal projects to begin with. Number two, begin exploring tools like Replit or whichever, software you want to use. But the same way people are saying, hey, if you're not using ChatGPT yet, you should probably start using it 30 minutes a day just to kind of mess around with it, understand, and not be just totally, in the dark. I feel that way about Replit. because this is one of those things where you're taking it a step further. You're not just uploading images into ChatGPT and it's like that's an advanced thing in your circle of friends. You are now able to exercise a skill that just previously was not on the table before. And I think that's a very exciting thing for all of us. So whether your app gets millions of users or not, the fact that you can even take the steps to build is underappreciated. It's being very quickly overlooked by just being able to do more, use it for more, where I think very quickly we can take it for granted. So I hope this was useful in sharing a perspective from a non-coder, total beginner's perspective. And I also hope it opened up some possibilities for you in terms of what is possible within your capabilities now. If you do mess with some of this, I would love to hear how you use it. Share that with me. I always love hearing from people who listen to the show, and definitely people who put some of these things into practice. You can reach out to me, hi@habitchess.com, or check out the links in the description below. You can check out Laplist at laplist.io. Let me know your feedback, what you think. I think in the months to come, I'm going to definitely be investing more time into building out small versions of what I did with Laplist. So I will be sharing more as I go, and I hope you will too. So thanks for hanging out, and I will see you on the next one.